Hi, everybody, and welcome to the DRF Breeding Report. I'm Dan Illman, always pleased to be talking pedigrees with Nicole Russo from Lexington, Kentucky. And Nicole, two very exciting and important prep races for the Kentucky Derby held last week, the Louisiana Derby and the Florida Derby. Let's start with the Louisiana Derby winner, Gervin. We're going to take a look at the stretch run of Gervin's win right now. This is a very exciting performer. He's less than a length away from being undefeated from 4 lifetime starts.
Yeah, and that one loss he's got, he was beaten less than a length in a little turf experiment there. Since getting back on dirt, he's won the Risen Star in the Louisiana Derby. He's really done nothing wrong. He just strikes me as such a scrappy little athlete of a horse. And he's by a stallion, Tail of Acadi, who tends to fly under the radar a little bit, but he's produced some nice graded stakes horses the last couple of years, including Tail of Verve, who was on the board in the Preakness behind American Tarot a couple of years ago.
Tail of Acadi, who stands for $7,500 at Darby Dan Farm in Kentucky, was a versatile performer in his own right, winner of the Wood Memorial at 1 1/8 miles, and then he won the Cigar Mile as a 3-year-old as well. What do you think of Tail of Acadi's distance and stamina? Do you think he's willing to give that sort of stamina to a 3-year-old to stretch out successfully to the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I certainly think he has the potential to, depending upon what he's crossed with. A lot of his better runners have been sort of shorter or middle distance types, but looking down, Gervin is out of a Malibu Moon mare, which certainly suggests some stamina there, but he's a half-brother to Cocked and Loaded, who did his best running sort of earlier in his 2-year-old season and winning the Iroquois at Churchill as a 2-year-old a little later on. Didn't, train on as well, was placed, graded stakes place sprinting as a 3-year-old. So kind of a mixed bag here with the pedigree, but I do like that Tail of Acadi over Malibu Moon.
Second dam, Catch My Fancy. That one's by Yes It's True. She was a multiple stakes winner sprinting on the dirt, so there is a little bit of versatility in this pedigree. Gervin was a $140,000 buyback at the Keeneland September yearling auction, and then the next month sold for $130,000 at Fasig-Tipton. But nice to see the 1 1/8 miles win, nice to see the versatile running style, and his horse is a perfect 3 for 3 on dirt, earning a 91 Beyer speed figure in the Louisiana Derby. Let's move to the Florida Derby. Always Dreaming burst onto the scene, yet another talented 3-year-old for Todd Pletcher. We're going to take a look at the stretch drive now for Always Dreaming. 97 Beyer speed figure. This one's by the very promising young stallion Bodemeister.
Yeah, from the first crop of Bodemeister, who himself, of course, won the Arkansas Derby before going on to run a good second in the Derby and in the Preakness. Really fast horse, really brilliant horse who could carry that around 2 turns. I've always believed we were going to see that sort of ability from his offspring, and I did believe that they would get better as they went along. Bodemeister himself didn't start as a 2-year-old, so you kind of got the hint that even though his 2-year-olds were good last year, that maybe they had more in the tank. And Always Dreaming, who's coming onto the scene sort of late in prep season here, really embodies that. And Bodemeister, of course, by Empire Maker, the Belmont winner, who's turning out some good classic-type sires. Of course, Empire Maker is also the sire of Pioneer of the Nile. So I'm really interested to see what the Bodemeisters do when they get that little bit of extra distance in the Derby, because I do think they'll handle it.
Bodemeister, of course, imparts the stamina. I'm interested in your thoughts, though, on the female side of this family. Always Dreaming has 2 wins at 1 1/8 miles, acts like he wants to run all day long. But when you dive into the female family, there's a lot of sprint influences here.
Yeah, it's certainly a cause for concern. Dam Above Perfection was a graded winner, but she did her best work going shorter. Her best runner before Always Dreaming came along was Hot Dixie Chick, who won the Grade 1 Spinaway as a 2-year-old, came back and was on the board in the 8 Bells sprinting as a 3-year-old. Hot Dixie Chick is a broodmare produced, Union Jackson, who's a stakes winner sprinting. Really, the female family is kind of skewed very heavily toward that one-turn ability, sprint ability. It's a classy family, but they're definitely looking to the sire line to balance out the limitations suggested there.
As a handicapper and bloodstock analyst, when you see a pedigree like this, a very promising, classy young stallion with stamina ability, a female family geared towards speed, how do you analyze or handicap a horse like this for the Kentucky Derby? Or do you simply say, this horse has raced 3 times around 2 turns, has won all 3 starts by a combined 20.5 lengths, and we'll trust Todd to get him the 1.25 miles?
Well, I think you really have to look at horses as individuals, and certainly you can look at the pedigree and say, okay, this side's very good, this side is a little bit weaker in terms of distance ability, but then you have to look at the horse as an individual and say, who is he taking after, what does he do as an individual, and certainly Always Dreaming, especially with this latest win in the Florida Derby, I think he's showing that he's leaning more toward his sire line in terms of that ability. I mean, sometimes it's not always a 50-50 split. You always have to look at both sides, but sometimes horses will really tend after one side of the family or the other, and I think this is a good example of that.
I agree. It seems that Always Dreaming is really taking after the Bodemeister side of the family. Okay, of the 2 major prep winners last week, Gervin and Always Dreaming, who do you feel is best equipped to handle the 1.25 miles on the first Saturday in May?
Gosh, I mean, I love the sound. I think in terms of sheer talent, I would go with Always Dreaming, and I do, as I said, love that sire line. It's a proven classic sire line going from Bodemeister to Empire Maker to Unbridled. But, you know, Gervin's done nothing wrong, and I really like the progression and the foundation that he has under him, and he's really done nothing wrong. So I think it's a very interesting question.
That's it for this week's DRF Breeding Report. Remember, you can follow Nicole at DRF Russo on Twitter. And for the latest breeding news, follow at DRF Breeding on Twitter. We'll see you next week for the DRF Breeding Report, because there are going to be 3 very important Kentucky Derby prep races that I'm sure we'll have to discuss.